But don't people who sincerely feel for a particular tradition approach the texts as sacred themselves? And so bring the attention and affection to the text that allows the text to really profoundly speak to them.
There is an argument here that is a very relevant argument that has been widely discussed in the last 40 or 50 years, especially since Heidegger, Gadamer, and so forth, and that is authorial intention relevant? So in other words, how relevant is, for example, Patanjali's intention in composing the Yoga Sutra? Now, and if you come along 2,200 years later and you pick up the Yoga Sutra and you consider this to be your sacred text, and you even worship this text, and you open it up and it speaks to you, now, how do we measure relevance here? Is it more relevant what Patanjali's intention was, or is it more relevant what you are picking up from the text?
It's not an either or, it's a both and.
Well, sometimes you can't have it both ways. In fact, I would say in this case, and in fact when we do in the next couple weeks analyze Patanjali and his Yoga Sutra, you'll see very clearly that we can't have it both ways because they're going in very different directions. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not advocating at this moment, because I want to, rather than advocate and take positions, and especially moral positions, good, bad, better, worse, and so forth, I would rather just like to lay all this stuff on the table and take a good look at the different pieces that we have on the table here. And this is one of the things that we really have to consider, that here's an author who composes something. He has an intention in doing so. His successors see what he has composed as an object or an item of great knowledge. Now, how are we to distinguish between what we wish to superimpose on that and the value of that superimposition, and that thing that that Patanjali or the author gave us in the first place? And what my interest is how we can get the closest access to what that intention, that authorial intention, might have been. How we can find those ways of finding that. And the first thing that we have to do in this process is we have to identify what tints we have in our spectacles, how to color adjust our Photoshop image here, so that once we know and we're clear about those things that that baggage that we bring into an analysis, then we can start to eliminate conclusions that just are not reasonable, because we can see how these things may skew what we're looking at, what I call epistemic violence. Violence to the object of our study so that it becomes something else. Heisenberg also addressed this in his uncertainty principle. And what I find that is very interesting about modern thinkers about these things is that there's really very few that go cross-disciplinary in the sense that we can take the higher thinking and the more precise vocabulary of some of the Western thinkers and use that to put the other academics who would represent India and other cultures, to put their feet to the fire. Because we do have in the West thinkers who are very concerned about how we look at some of this material, especially when we want to derive something of value from it. And in the case of speech, sacred speech here, there is definitely a question of value. If for no other reason, for the simple reason that the boys at IIT in Bombay in the 50s and 60s took a 2,500-year-old meta-language, concept of meta-language and actual meta-language, applied it to a machine instead of a human being, and created the greatest explosion of wealth in the planet's history. So we're not just talking theories and moralism here. We're talking trajectories and we're talking strategies. And if we're going to talk these trajectories and strategies, then we have to discipline ourselves so that we're not just chasing our own tail, so that we're not creating a circular logic where we're looking at ourselves in the mirror and calling it something else. This is what I personally feel is the state of the New Age and the yoga movement in the West and the East now, and the sort of new religions, the sort of the how to put it, nouveau Buddhism, nouveau Hinduism, nouveau all these various new religions. Did you want to say something, Kailash?
No.
Oh.
Just listening. Are we out of time?
We're out of time in a few minutes. Yeah, we have about. I gave us an extra 15 minutes this evening in case we wanted to discuss anything like technical issues or anything else aside from the content.
May I ask you to summarize specifically and help us to see where we're going? Are you going to be presenting us with for example, accessing oral tradition that goes deeper than what we've known before?
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is the whole. This is the reason why I want I want all of us to be able to get on a similar page as far as assumptions go, because if I jump straight into the speech itself, I know what everyone's going to do, and that is going to be superimpose categories and things on the speech that will eliminate the possibility of knowing that speech. There are issues, for example, things that we take for granted, that we assume, such as evolution. Okay? This is in almost any discourse on Hindu thinking, philosophy, Buddhist, all this stuff. We get this idea of development and evolution. And yet, if we look at two marks on the surface of the world, one, the pyramids, and second, Panini's Ashtajayi, his text of a meta-language, his great grammar. His great grammar was called by the founder, by the father of modern linguistics, Leonard Bloomfield, as the greatest single work in the composition of mankind. And the pyramids, as I think all of us understand, are just completely inexplainable by any kind of modern standards. That if indeed the world and the chronology or history of the world acted as we are informed in the Enlightenment, that we started out at a primitive place and we went to a place of sort of religion, and then arrived at a place of human logic and rational thinking, that we are now at the pinnacle of human civilization, then we have a lot of problems explaining a lot of these things in the past. So, without having to say that evolution is wrong, or that no, we don't have to say that, and that's why I'm not taking these moral positions on these issues, but rather trying to put them on the table so that we don't assume the case that things develop, that things started out primitive and they end up sophisticated. Because with India, that certainly is not the case when we look at the movement of culture.